Play. So hello everybody. I am Maria and I am the admin of the Money Making Esthetician Facebook group. And today I am with Drew. Drew, thank you so much for doing this. I was like, do you want to do a live on acne? Because she has such a wealth of knowledge. On top of that, Drew did come out with her own acne course, which was long awaited. Drew, do you want to do a little bit of intro about your journey within our industry and then about your acne course and then where they can find it as well?
Yeah, absolutely. So I have been a licensed esthetician for a little over a decade now. I got into this industry when I struggled with my own acne. I was pretty severe acne case myself. And I think I did what a lot of estheticians who have struggled with acne do and tried everything, researched everything. And then I realized, you know what would be cheaper? Is going and getting licensed. So I went to school hoping to be educated in acne, and the industry let me down. I learned absolutely nothing about acne in school. School served to make my acne worse, which I always joke was like the best thing to ever happen to me, because I was very determined. I was really dedicated to making sure my skin cleared and to being my own first before and after. So I tried everything. I think first and foremost, I did the peel and the burn and just remove the acne physically the way that so many of us are taught. I went to school and I learned this is what you do with acne. And every single thing that I did that was by the book, at least by their book, uh, made it worse. And I think a lot of people in the industry have seen that, whether it's through their own skin or through client skin. And I began to look at the biology behind acne. I started to take more deep dives into how the skin actually functions. I went down many rabbit holes. I had two babies back to back. And during that time, that's all I did was study. And take courses, take classes, but also a lot of independent study and research on my own, talking to a lot of professionals and people that I really looked up to, and felt like they understood a lot more to the acne story than what I was seeing myself. So that's kind of how I got into it all. I think 10 years later, this has become more than a passion. It's become something I am completely obsessed with, honestly. Acne is my jam. I can't help but want to help people when it comes to acne. And honestly, it's kind of funny because I even put a pause on taking clients, but I am incapable of saying no when acne is the concern. So that's where we are now. I recently came out with an acne course finally because I just felt like, in the beginning, I was doing a lot of education as far as attending education and trying to dive into education anywhere I could, but I was hearing so many conflicting things within education throughout the industry. And not only conflicting things, but things I just knew were wrong or oversimplified, I think was the biggest part of it. Even if they weren't wrong, people were navigating just a very small part of the big acne story. And I felt like that was such a disservice to the professional and to our clients and consumers at whole. So I wound up finally, doing one-on-one mentorships with a lot of professionals, and through that, I was really able to identify and target where some of these gaps were, what people were struggling with most, and where some of the lack of information was within the industry. So that's how I started putting together a course, and yeah, we just launched the course 2 months ago. It's been doing really well. It is a biology focused course, so I do try to be overly transparent with that. There's a lot of estheticians out there that want protocols handed to them, and that's not what this is, because this is the foundation that you need to be able to utilize and optimize a protocol. You cannot successfully treat acne with any products or modalities or anything like that if you do not understand the biology and what's happening to the skin, underneath the skin, within the body, all of that. So that's what this focuses on. And it's not your typical training that I think a lot of people are used to, where they're focused on, XYZ foods can contribute to acne, and you got to chase that root cause and find out what your triggers are. It's not that. This training really focuses on acne as a self-sustaining feedback system with all of these self-perpetuating loops that the skin gets stuck in, and identifying those loops, identifying where the specific skin that you're looking at is stuck, and then some, common ways to pull them out of that. It's brand neutral. It's not really focusing on specific products, but it is really just focused on the skin. And it's on my website. It's bareyourskin.com under education. But yeah, it was really fun to create, which is probably weird.
I have a question. When you say the gaps, what gaps did you see that needed filling?
Oh, that's a really great question. So I think it was, I tend to start a lot of my mentorships and even when I do consultations remotely with clients, by listening. I want to hear where people are in their journey and what they know already or what they think they know or any of that too. So I would say, one of the biggest things, we've got the traditional acne framework, right? That we're constantly told, um, is what causes acne. I think everybody at one point has been at a training or listened to an educator who has really picked one of these and focused on it. So you've got, your sebum, your oil production. And in order to manage or control acne, you have to really get rid of the oil production. There's hyperkeratinization. I think that's one that I know one of the more popular lines that is completely acne focused tends to really hyperfixate on and says that is what you need to target. That is the cause of acne. It's hyperkeratinization, the accumulation of dead skin cells that we really need to get rid of, and you need to go in there and forcibly remove them. There's others that, I see this one in threads all the time when people are blaming the acne bacteria itself. And it's a constant, well, you're going to spread the acne bacteria, or you need to go in there and control the bacteria by using something really aggressive that can just kill it. People will blame inflammation now, which isn't super off base, but I feel like it's too small and narrow. Even hygiene is another one that I just see people hyperfixate on all the time. Change your pillowcase like every night. Your washcloths are going to, again, spread that bacteria and give you acne. The clothes we wear, touching our face, all of these things are, you pick one, and that's usually what any given individual will focus on when it comes to acne and say, this is the cause, this is the issue, this is what you need to target, this is what you need to manage. And that is massively oversimplified, if not incorrect. Um, so I would say that was the biggest gap that I saw, was just really that traditional acne framework that, that Milady book that we all love so much tells you is completely correct. And then it leads to the traditional acne treatments, which don't always work. And if they do work, I question the definition of work. We'll often see them work short term, and then we'll see acne flare back up 10 times worse down the road, or we'll see it, create a surface calm, but that tells us nothing about what's happening underneath the surface. I think there's definitely a big gap in ingredient knowledge, but I think that's actually a much bigger issue within the industry that I'm hoping to tackle down the road. Uh, so that's not fully in here either. It is kind of to an extent, but it's such a big issue that I have to really dive into and focus on more heavily. So, I mean, I think that's really where I was seeing those gaps most.
Thank you so much for sharing. So, if I'm a new esthetician and I want to be acne focused, where do I start? What do I do?
That's tricky. That's very, very tricky. Because, I mean, I was a new esthetician at once too, dealing with my own skin. And I did a lot of studying and understanding biology, and I would say that's where you need to start. One of the biggest issues I have with education in this industry is that the first thing estheticians are taught is how to be aggressive, how to exfoliate the skin, how to beat the skin into submission. And they're taught all of that before they're taught anything about skin biology. And that's frustrating. I think exfoliation and everything else needs to come way down the line, like way after we have been taught how to manage the skin barrier and make sure everything is super healthy within the skin. And that's just not the case. So it's incredibly frustrating. Oh my gosh, yes, Amanda, thank you so much. Hormones too. That's another one that everybody loves to say is a cause of acne.
So, if somebody was to come in, they look like they have a ton of acne, a lot of redness. Where do you start?
So that is something I actually have a presentation for. I've
Oh,
unpacked. I've tried to summarize a lot of what I talk about in my course to give you a more broad overview of exactly where we do want to start and exactly what we need to look at, and the sequence of operations we need to adjust before we can just start saying, you know what, you just need some peels. Let's just peel all that acne off. There's a lot of other things that come into play before any of that can happen. And that is definitely something I can answer a little bit more thoroughly as we dive into that.
well, let's go for it. I'm
Okay,
excited.
cool.
Do we have any
Awesome.
other questions before we start? Nope.
Sweet. All right. Okay, I'm gonna see if it's gonna let me share my screen here. Um, okay. Everybody's able to see that?
Yes.
Okay, cool. So basically, what we have here, let me try to get my notes too, because I'm a note taker. So, contrary to what a lot of us are taught, acne doesn't start with a clogged pore. That is not where acne starts. It really is going to begin with the environment of the skin and when that environment becomes unstable. And we start responding to things that healthy skin should honestly be able to respond to without being so dramatic. So we talked about, that hygiene, bacterial overgrowth, all of those things. Yeah, we don't want our pillows to be disgusting and we should definitely wash them. But our skin should be able to tolerate not having to wash our pillow every single night, right? We should be able to tolerate a certain level of bacteria in our environment. Um, Without our skin blowing up. And that's what healthy skin should do. So that's something that I think we go wrong with when we look at acne treatments because instead of focusing on the environment, we're really just focusing on a single lesion. And what's the first thing you do when you have a breakout, right? Uh, you play whack-a-mole. You focus on that specific lesion. You start trying to spot treat. You peel. We aren't really thinking about the systems that are at play that really got us there in the first place. And while I think a lot of people can recognize bits and pieces of the systems I'm going to be going over too, I think the overarching way that they all converse with each other and play together just isn't really fully understood. Or just at least it's oversimplified and a little underestimated. So the first thing we have, again, I think this is pretty common knowledge to most, is going to be barrier structure, right? Barrier health is the critical foundation to healthy skin. That's when the barrier becomes unstable. You've got that epidermal, transepidermal water loss and accelerated inflammation. And that's going to mean that the follicle is a much easier place for inflammation, retention, and then microbial shifts to begin to occur. The next place, once all that happens, is going to be your redox balance. Basically, it's redox is just simply the balance between oxidation and then the skin's ability to neutralize that oxidation. So when this balance is stable, then the important lipids that make up the skin barrier and the lamellar layers and support the environment as a whole can stay intact. Cell membranes can begin to stay functional. Inflammatory signaling can resolve normally, but when that balance shifts towards oxidation, then lipids begin to degrade and your signaling molecules, then they change their signals towards more inflammatory. And that's going to then trigger your immune tone. And the skin, I think something that people don't recognize either is that the skin has its own immune response, right? It's localized, it's part of that environment. And it's always essentially just scanning through the environment and communicating with microbes and responding to any and all damage, no matter how small. Um, and like even just small day-to-day insults, your immune system is constantly targeting, repairing, healing, responding, all of those things. And the baseline level of all of that activity is basically what we mean when we refer to it as a tone. In healthy skin, that tone can stay pretty calm and recognize normal microbes and handle small irritations that we experience throughout the day. Um, but when that tone becomes elevated and that baseline is moved towards an inflammatory state, the skin's going to be reacting more strongly again to those normal things that we should be able to manage and handle in healthy skin. Um, and that's really important because in this state, the follicles start producing inflammatory signals earlier and more easily, which is one of the reasons we see breakouts go from I just had one small lesion on my face to now there's five. It's that exact moment and that part of the system and sequence. The next part is going to be microbial behavior, which is different than just bacteria, right? Because once that immune tone begins to shift, the barrier's struggling, oxidation's on the rise, you've got your lipids struggling to like replenish themselves. The microbial community in the follicle starts to behave differently. And again, it leans more and more towards inflammatory, which is an important distinction because acne is not again, about the presence of bacteria, it's those microbes that are already there on any healthy skin, right? Healthy skin also has acne bacteria. It's just acting in a healthy way. It's not acting in an unhealthy way. They're beneficial in healthy skin. They're part of the ecosystem. And they support really prime functions. They break down components of the sebum, support the acid mantle, they communicate with the immune system, and they help regulate that tone. It's only when it's in an inflammatory state, when the environment begins to change and it starts to contribute towards that inflammatory signaling. So you can start to see where indiscriminately just blowing up bacteria can be an issue when you're trying to reinstate overall skin health. And finally, what Amanda pointed out too before is going to be your endocrine signaling, your hormones. This one's always really interesting because it's one of the biggest, most misunderstood factors. I think all of us can relate to the self-diagnosis of clients coming into our treatment room and saying, I've just got some hormonal acne, right? That's actually one of my biggest gripes. Because the skin is actually what's known as a peripheral endocrine organ, which means it both responds to hormones and creates its own. And if it's creating its own hormones, then systemic hormone levels throughout our body are actually telling us very little about what's happening inside the follicle, right? It's not, the systemic hormones aren't as big of an influencer as the hormonal activity inside of the follicle as we initially thought or as clients commonly think. Um, Now, obviously, too, a disclaimer here, there are some conditions and cases of like hormonally dominant acne. Those are going to be different, right? We're talking about a different baseline here. People with hormonal conditions and like varying degrees of hormonal imbalances are going to have signals that can overpower that local environment. But those are really going to be the exceptions, not the rule. So when we see people self-diagnosing with hormonal acne and deciding that they need to like fix the internal hormones, um, before they even touch that local environment, it's really going to be an issue. Because even in those exceptions, the people with actual hormonal imbalances and PCOS and endometriosis, fixing the environment of the skin can still help tremendously. And it actually should ideally be done before you start messing with other things internally. Unless, of course, you're under the care of a doctor, then you know they should be done simultaneously. Okay, so basically, when we look at why those traditional frameworks and how we address them start to fail, we want to start with oil because I think this is one that really grinds my gears. Um, Something I heard, and this is just to give a little insight and context into the industry as it stands right now. I was in school for cosmetic chemistry, and we were learning about how to conduct a clinical trial. And this is a very well-known educator in that space. And they said, when conducting a clinical trial for acne, you should really find participants between the ages of 14 and I want to say they said 22. And they followed that up with because acne doesn't really exist outside of those ages. So imagine my surprise specializing in adult acne when that was said. I may have screamed a little, things were thrown because it just really made me understand why we're in the predicament that we are. If that is how clinical testing is done with that assumption, then no wonder we're addressing adult acne that has very little to do with excessive oil production, the same way we're addressing a 14-year-old's acne that sometimes does have more to do with that. So basically, we need our oil, right? The skin's not just arbitrarily producing it for no reason. It actually lubricates the follicle. It participates in antimicrobial defenses. And generally, when we see an uptick of oil and acne at the same time, the issue is just not as straightforward as I think people want to make it. A compromised barrier, more often than not, is actually the first thing that can increase oil production. So when we continue to address the oil production aggressively and we further compromise the skin barrier, we start to see more oil being produced. And that's going to perpetuate more of these systems and loops. The issue when it comes to acne is actually a shift in the lipid quality. So it's going to shift towards something that's more easily oxidizable and contributes to the redox imbalance we just talked about. So when we see keratinocytes struggle during that differentiation process, and all of this amplifies more inflammatory signaling. So that's the first one. When we go to silence inflammation, that's another one that's kind of tricky because I think that is something that's taught right now, and it's not wrong, but it's not completely right either. Um, and people really want to see it as black and white when it's really a lot more gray than that. On one hand, you have inflammation, which is absolutely needed for wound healing, right? To steal a line from one of my favorite educators, and if you've ever sat through one of his lessons, you'll recall this anecdote. But inflammation is needed to heal a wound, and if you're running through the woods and you cut yourself on a rusty nail, you better hope inflammation's on your side, right? You need that inflammation to heal that wound and hopefully not die. But we're in aesthetics. Nobody's dying, hopefully, in your treatment room. We're trying to optimize wound healing. And to do that, we actually don't quite need inflammation in the same capacity. We need healthy healing. And healing in the presence of inflammation is what gives us fibrotic healing, or that scarring, if you will. So, yeah, we need inflammation to be triggered the way it would be in healthy skin, but then we need that cycle, the inflammatory cycle, to actually finish really quickly for optimal wound healing. If anybody's ever read Dr. Setterfield's microneedling book, I cannot recommend it enough, even if you don't microneedle. It explains this so well. He goes into detail about the wound healing process and just really how we can optimize that. And he talks about why we want to avoid inflammation in the face of healing. We don't want that fibrotic, plastic, stretched collagen. We want healthy basket weave collagen. And that's what we're going to get if we're able to calm down that inflammation the way that we need to. So it's more about shutting it down at the right time, right? And I think, again, too, to kind of reflect this back to real world situations, when you look at somebody with acne prone skin and you talk about maturation arrest acne, that non-inflamed acne, those bumps in the skin, that's the type of situation where inflammation never triggered at all. Now, that's a problem. We don't want that either. And so we do need inflammation to trigger. so that the immune system can recognize what's going on there and actually see the congestion underneath the skin for what it is. But once that inflammation is activated, we need it to cycle through really quickly, calm down so that we can heal those acne lesions the right way and not have the scarring that we would get from healing those types of lesions in an inflammatory manner. All right, sterilizing microbes. The antibacterial approach. This is something that I could go on for hours about, but I think this one, thankfully, I think with the awareness that's being circulated about, the microbiome and the gut-skin axis and all the other things too, people are starting to recognize that broad antibacterial approaches is not good for anything. At least I hope so. So this is always going to kick the can down the road when you just go in and start obliterating bacteria on the skin. You will always have that surface calm at the expense of the overall health of the skin. You can't have both, unfortunately, with this approach. It just doesn't work. We need a healthy and diverse ecosystem on our skin for it to function optimally. Yeah, so that one, not ideal. Chasing hormones first. Again, this might be necessary in some cases, but I would argue that local skin environment should be addressed first, if not at the same time. And the goal is not suppression, it's modulation. Let's see. And these are different. And this is, I think, if there's anything you take away from this today, it's this. Because a lot of what we're taught and a lot of the common treatments for acne today are suppressive, right? They halt early repair signals. They can delay lipid synthesis and sometimes arrest it for a significant amount of time to the point where our skin is no longer really able to synthesize those lipids down the road either. Because as we age, that's already declining. So if you start prematurely delaying the lipid synthesis, I would say Accutane is one of the best examples of this because that is what it does. It compromises our body's ability to synthesize lipids. So if our skin barrier is made up of predominantly lipids that create that really beautiful brick and mortar structure in our skin, and you've gotten rid of all those lipids, not only is that structure compromised, but your skin is now leaking hydration. It's unable to sustain itself. You need a lot more topical support to actually get the same result as somebody who has not done that to their bodies. So that's where it becomes tricky. And again, I don't shame anybody either for doing Accutane. I always address it with my clients as it is a matter of priority. My priority is to help you optimize your skin for sustainable health. But if your priority is to have that surface calm now, then maybe this is the path for you. But I will always try to educate in that manner too. So this is not me saying don't ever do Accutane or anything like that. It's just the transparency factor of education here. So basically, when we modulate, we're able to control that healing and support healthy skin, not just beat the crap out of the skin until it submits and just simply can't respond to anything, because that's always going to backfire at some point. And I think most people who have extensive experience with acne can, at least to some extent, recognize certain clients that maybe they've treated with the more aggressive approach, who they were like, wow, we had their skin clear. I hear this all the time from estheticians I mentor. I had this client's skin clear. It was beautiful. And then all of a sudden they started breaking out again. And it's just been so stubborn. I can't get it to calm down again. And that's through the aggressive approach, right? That's because you've suppressed everything and it's starting to rebel. And at some point, it generally will in some capacity, right? Whether it's more acne, whether it's perioral dermatitis, whether it's premature aging, whatever it's going to be, you're going to see negative effects of that down the road. So that's the biggest thing I want to stress to people too. Okay, so how do we do that? Well, first, let's talk about this a little bit more because I want to just really highlight why modulation supports optimal healing. This is that fibrotic healing, right? This is going to be what we see when inflammation is left to linger. When inflammation sticks around for longer than we want it to, this is the type of collagen that it creates, and the type of fibrotic healing that we then see down the road. So I'm sure everybody's familiar with that type of skin, but I just wanted to give an image to that as well. And then when you modulate the skin, you're able to still manage that inflammation, but in a healthy way, and optimize the healing response of acne the same way you essentially would any controlled wound, like microneedling. Same concept. That wound healing cascade is exactly what's at play here. So, again, if you have the opportunity to read Dr. Sutterfield's book, it'll highlight this very specifically too. Okay, so the sequence. Let's talk about this. Maria, you asked, so how do we do this? And where do we start when you see that client come in with that face full of acne and redness and everything else? The first place you're always going to start is structure. Because again, that barrier is foundational. So we have to address it first. Um, these changes can be incredibly subtle, which is, I think, what makes it frustrating on the surface, but they're super loud at a cellular level. In some cases, this can really be all that it takes to clear. In people who have not done extensive correction to their skin, who have not been using that acid-based cleanser morning and night, who maybe are not experiencing a lot of issues. I would say people who are like, I'm breaking out. You're the first person I came to see, and I haven't really done anything about it. Those are the people that I actually see clear just from repairing the barrier. We usually can just get that in order, get that stabilized, and you'll see acne just go away and stay away. That's my favorite, but that's not common. Unfortunately, in this world where we have so many options when it comes to skincare, that is not common. Um, but in serious cases, unfortunately, too, things can even get a lot worse before they get better during a recalibration phase, which I will go over in a minute too. But regardless, this is the part that matters long term and during healing, this foundational stabilization. And then once that structure is stabled, redox actually becomes easier to control because lipids aren't sitting in a state where they oxidize at the slightest push. Vitamin E in the skin, it stops draining rapidly, like trying to just repair everything that it possibly can with all of the oxidation that's naturally going on with our sebum that has become oxidized. And the enzymatic recycling network recovers and the skin regains that buffering capacity that it needs to actually complete the repair process and not just keep cycling in an inflammatory process. And then only after those two are addressed and things start to settle into place do we see that microbial communication begin to shift. And now it's really important to recognize that barrier and the skin's microbiome are interlocked, right? You cannot have the health of one without having the health of the other, or the compromisation of one without the compromisation of the other. So, generally speaking, when you have the structure stabilized first, it'll actually start to tackle these two as well. Now, obviously, there are other things you can do to move that along and other ingredients that you can use to move those things along too. You have your antioxidants, right? There's also a lot of really great technology out there now to support the microbiome. Um, but you just have to be careful. I think there's also a lot of things, like I was saying about ingredients, where you've got some antioxidants in products that aren't completely stable and lean towards oxidation themselves. So just certain things that you can do to help support that process. Um, where did my mouse just go? I lost it. Oh, I think it's dead. That's fun. Let me bring out my other one real quick. Um, Here we go. There we go. I got it. Okay. Um, so that microbial part of things as well, I think, as a previous acne sufferer myself, and anybody else who has had significant acne to deal with, I can attest to the inflammatory qualities of some of that acne. If you've ever had a lesion that seemed to last for months and almost have its own heartbeat, um, and they just refuse to go away no matter what you do. this microbial aspect of things is where you might see a higher lesion count temporarily, but where you start to see a much faster heal in the lesion time. So you can, and that's actually one of the places that I start to gauge success. And again, I'll talk about that too here in a little bit, but that is just to highlight that part of things, the microbial cooperation aspect of things too. You start to see more lesions, but they're more superficial. They're not the deep ones. They're not the aggressive ones. Inflammation starts to kind of calm down a little bit. So that part is good too. Then you've got the hormone factor, because only once everything else is really in a good place can you actually evaluate your skin for what might really be an actual hyper-responsive responsiveness to hormonal fluctuations. And again, with clients who have PCOS or endometriosis or even ongoing stress, they're going to have an elevated baseline. So their skin might take more to achieve the same level of calm that a person without those systemic influences are going to have. Okay. And now something I think that's really important here. This is what I was talking about when I was saying what we're gonna see and how I'm gonna gauge success, because it's not necessarily gonna be in clear skin. The first thing I emphasize with clients, and something I say every time I meet with them, is that healthy skin is not always clear skin, and clear skin is definitely not always healthy skin. I see a lot of clear skin that is not very healthy. So my priority is healthy skin. And it's not always going to be a pretty or linear journey. It can be all over the place. But your early stability markers and the things that you can start to evaluate in the skin, even when they appear to have an uptick of acne, is going to be faster healing. I make clients fill out an entire question log every time we have a check-in, and these questions are in it, right? How fast has your healing been compared to before we started to work on things? Are you seeing lesions go away faster, or about the same? How is the inflammation doing? Um, how is your oiliness doing? If you are somebody who maybe got oily around 3 or 4 o'clock in the day, how is that? 99% of the time, when we repair all of the things we just talked about, that goes away significantly for a lot of people. And that's usually a really good sign that they're able to normalize within their skin, but also that they're able to retain hydration, because some of that shine they're seeing is actually transepidermal water loss. Um, and so, us being able to evaluate that tells us that we are where we want to be. That's fantastic. What they're usually going to notice too is that their skin just does feel a little bit calmer between flares, especially for your female clients. You might, it's like 3 steps forward, 2 steps back. You're going to see significant clearing, and then surprise, menstrual cycle, and it gets worse again. And then it clears again, significantly, and then it gets worse again. So we try to talk about not evaluating their skin. Um, in a linear manner. You don't want to look at it from week to week. You want to look at it same time during menstrual cycles, which is why I have them take images of their skin at least once a week, because I want to look at how it looked while you were ovulating last month, not how it looked last week, and compare the two. And that's something I stress to them a lot too, because for people with acne, we're traumatized. If you haven't ever struggled with acne, it's traumatic to the point where you could have completely clear skin, but because you've gone through an event where you've had significantly compromised skin, a single lesion will put you back in the same mentality where you'll just feel like nothing is working again, even though you're significantly clearer. And this is where images are so important with this group of clientele. So looking at all of that becomes crucial. And then again, your product philosophy that we just kind of went over, it needs to build structure first. Your products and your the treatments that you're using has to be barrier supportive. Unfortunately, barrier has become a marketing term, and about 95, and throw out a random statistic, but I would assume and guess, I would say about 95% of the products that say barrier supportive on them, when you turn them over and look at the ingredients, do not contain barrier support. I had a conversation years ago, probably like, I don't know, 7 years ago, with a owner of a pretty popular professional product line who they were trying to get me to carry their products, and I asked about barrier support, and they literally did not know what the barrier was. Given this was 8 years ago before it got trendy, but they should still know what that is. And today, now I'm seeing all of this barrier support marketed from this company. And when you look at the products, it's actually the opposite. Some of these products are significantly problematic for people with barrier compromised or acne prone skin, including the products that specifically say they are for acne. So you just have to be really careful with what you're looking for. The three main components for rebuilding the skin barrier are going to be ceramides, cholesterol, and free fatty acid. Some companies will get that right and have those three components in a product. Oftentimes, they're not in the right percentages or ratios. They need to be in an equimolar ratio, which people don't really always grasp. So that's tricky, but it's still better than nothing. If you see ceramides and cholesterol in a product, it's better than nothing. You see ceramides in a product, it's better than nothing. There's also barrier supportive ingredients, phytosphingosine, lots of different, niacinamide is another one that can actually support this process too, but you do need those fundamental ingredients too. Okay, all right, this is more talking than I'm used to doing. Ah. All right, so I want to talk about the purge narrative for a moment. Um, because I was actually someone who really bought into this quite a bit myself. And I don't want to really even dog on it too much because it is sort of a thing. It's just not the way that people tend to think of it as. It's really more semantics at this point, but I want to make it kind of a little bit more clear to people who are listening to this narrative as well. Um, because this idea that the skin just has all of this underlying congestion to expel, that can absolutely happen, but it's not the whole story. And a purge is going to be quick, right? A purge is going to be something where it happens and it's done. Um, with my clients, they can tell you that they went through a situation like this for months. It's not a purge. And you'll notice too, a lot of my clients that I show you on a lot of these pictures are not my easy clients. I think that's an out. I'm going to show you my difficult clients. This client specifically went through this. She was my longest client with acne. She was a 14-month case, but we were able to heal her without any issues. She came to me with depression. She had just lost a baby in childbirth. She almost lost her own life. She went septic, and so she had to be pumped full of antibiotics and a whole bunch of other stuff. So by the time she came to me, her acne was really severe and it was rough. We spent so much time working on it and trying to get it clear in a healthy manner. And she had so many ups and downs. But as you can see at the end, we were able to clear her with no scarring. She's still one of my very good friends today. And she will message me randomly when she feels like she's having a good makeup day just to show me her face. And I love it. And it's what makes all of this worth it. But that's not a purge, right? You're not purging for 14 months. That's not what's happening. What you're seeing is a recalibration process. And the way I like to explain this, especially to clients, is it's similar to somebody being on a steady diet of fast food, saturated fats, and just lots of really poorly nutrient dense foods that are just not really offering much. Now, when a person is on a diet like that and then decides, I want to get healthier, I want to lose weight, my question to them is always, do you think that first salad feels good? How do you think your body's going to feel after that first salad? Because it's not great. And this is where I challenge them, right? Your nutrient dense skincare is coming for you the same way that salad is coming from somebody who was on just products that were not giving their bodies the support they needed. We're doing the same thing. Okay, when you eat that first salad and you start leaning into some healthier foods, your body's going to go through some stuff. Okay, you're going to have some GI upset, you're going to have some issues where you just do not feel great. And this is the same case. That doesn't mean it's the salad's fault. That doesn't mean you should say, I am laying off salads forever, and whatever doctor told me this was the right thing to do can shove it. I'm going back to my McDonald's. Like, that's not the right response to your body going through a recalibration period as it starts to accept nutrients, as it starts to understand what to do with them. Your skin's the same way. I mean, it's been going through a lot, and now we're starting to support it. You're going to have a whole lot of things going on. And when the skin is calibrating, we're identifying different checkpoints for health that we had just gone over, and remembering again that healthy skin is not always clear skin, and clear skin is not always healthy skin. So identifying those lesion sizes like we talked about, the quicker healing time, all of that, and most importantly, no fibrotic healing, so no scarring is what we're focused on. We're not focused on immediate clear skin. And again, this is where that priority part comes into play. Because I will tell clients if clearing tomorrow is your priority, that's fine, but I am not the professional for you. Um, because if they want to kick that can down the road and do things aggressively, I am not going to stand in their way, but I do give them the understanding to go along with it so that when things start to spiral down the road, they understand what's going on. Um, okay, so we're going to talk again really quick, just further into that purging process and healing. Again, the clients I'm about to show you were not my easy clients. They were my hard clients. And that's what we want to reflect here, right? We had somebody who came in with scarring already and acne that was really, really deep. We were able to clear her with minimal scarring. The only scarring that's remaining is very minor and was already present when she came in. This was a pregnant client, so very difficult. I couldn't use my favorite modalities on her, but we were still able to get that cleared without any scarring. And these were rough because you can see the severity of the acne in both of these clients. It's so inflamed, significantly inflamed. And we worked really, really, really hard to get everything calmed. But again, if these clients are coming to you and this inflammation has been like this for a really long time, then fibrotic healing can have already started. And that's really important to recognize as well. Because when they say, I want to heal without scarring, you have to be able to say, cool, how long has this been going on? You may already have scarring, but we're going to do our best. And once they're clear or clearer, you can start microneedling and collagen induction therapy and things like that too to help support it as well. But this is just raw skin on virtual clients actually that we worked together to get this clear. And you can see there's really no scarring on the forehead or even minimal scarring right here where this really deep lesion was. That almost took on a rashy type look. So just really important to remember that when we heal things with this systems forward approach, we are really able to make sure there's just not that fibrotic healing that we're used to. Okay, I am done here. So I know that was a lot. That was a lot for me. Sorry, I had my thing pulled up, so I didn't get to look at some of the questions on here. Which these are really fun now. I want to look through all of them. Um,
I can help. So, what are your favorite modalities?
Galvanic, as you know.
Galvanic.
I love galvanic for acne so much. And anybody who wants to tell me it's a dinosaur can pry it out of my cold, dead hands. The results I see with galvanic are insane. Now, I work primarily virtually with clients, so I'm not even always doing treatments on them, but the clients I have been fortunate enough to work in a hybrid sense where we work virtually and doing treatments. Um, Galvanic's insane. Now, the trick with galvanic too is that you cannot just have somebody come in off the streets and do galvanic and perform galvanic on them because you need a healthy barrier. You need the skin to be not super dehydrated or nothing's going to happen. The whole thing with galvanic is that you are essentially saponifying the hardened sebum in the skin, turning it into liquid. And then I will use an ultrasonic spatula to gently, not dig the way you see on a lot of YouTube videos, go over the skin, turn water into vapor, and shoot a lot of the saponified sebum out of the pores. And you will see it on the end of your spatula
Yeah.
when you're doing that. It's amazing. And the more they have been taking care of their skin in a healthy capacity, the more barrier support they've been on, the more hydrated their skin is, the more you're going to be able to get out. So I will have clients be on that for a significant amount of time before we have them come in for galvanic. LED is another one I absolutely adore. Um, but the other thing to think about with galvanic, I don't even do traditional extractions unless somebody has really significant blackheads. I will do galvanic first. I will then do the ultrasonic spatula. And if something's very obvious right there, I will do very gentle extractions, but I'm never squeezing or pushing or anything like that either. Um, the other thing to recognize too is that, especially, well, in females, um, hormones do affect the overall health of the skin. As you usually can tell, your skin's a lot more dehydrated when you're menstruating. Generally, about 14 days into your menstrual cycle is the best time to do galvanic on the skin, perform galvanic, and use that spatula because the skin is the calmest um, and the most hydrated. So you're going to get more out of it. And it's really counterintuitive, right? A client wants to come in and get a facial when their skin looks its worst, but that's the worst time to be doing an acne facial because the skin is tight, inflamed, dehydrated, and things aren't coming out as well.
How long between photos?
It's going to be different for everybody. That first one I told you was 14 months. The other ones I want to say were about one of them, the one with the scarring, um, that had lighter acne. She was actually only 3 months, which was amazing. I was so happy. But the other ones were about 8 or 9, which is usually the normal time period, unless you have extenuating situations that cause them to go into the over a year mark.
Tiffany said, LOL, face reality. Ingredient formulation is everything. I love having patients take their own photos regularly. Really shows the progression that I would have never even thought about that. The bottom line for me is going to be what ingredients accomplish all of these in order to know if you have the right products to use and sell.
That's tricky. And here's my, without going into my crazy spiel about ingredients, and because I have such an issue with this right now, the industry's in a bad place. I'm not even going to lie to you. Like, it's in a bad place when it comes to formulations. I went down a rabbit hole. I got certified in cosmetic chemistry. Like, I did all of these different things to try to understand the answer to that question. And it just made me more frustrated. Like I explained to you, the cosmetic chemistry instructor that mentioned, the testing on people between 14 and 22, because that's the only window acne exists in. Um, it's such a huge issue because you have chemists who are formulating for stability. They're formulating a product to be stable on a shelf. They are not formulating it for skin. And then you have skin specialists who don't quite understand cosmetic chemistry. They'll understand ingredients, but then we have issues, right? One of the things that I didn't touch on this, but I do touch on a lot in my education is going to be one of the things that actually works against us most, and it's going to be the surfactant and emulsifier load in our existing products, right? People don't understand things like, I want to use CeraVe as an example here. They have ceramides, cholesterol, free fatty acids in their products. They do. It's awesome. That's great. Cool. So it should work in a certain way. Well, why doesn't it? Why do all of us see people who come to us all the time on those products with problematic skin? And when you ask this question in a professional group, you'll get a ton of different answers. But the single most important part of that is the surfactant and emulsifier load. In cosmetic chemistry, surfactants and emulsifiers are the same molecule, right? And a surfactant is the component that's in a cleanser that attaches to lipids and washes with water, right? So it's able to blend the two and rinse clean. Well, the emulsifier is the exact same molecule and it's on the skin all day long. So you might have something that goes on the skin and feels great, but then you wash it off and your skin is immediately tight. It's more than likely taking your lipids with it due to its emulsification system. And that's a huge problem. But an aggressive emulsification system gives you stronger shelf stability. So cosmetic chemists love them. And that's a huge issue in the skincare industry. If you are going to have amazing key ingredients in your skincare, but you have ingredients that counteract them by removing all of your barrier lipids, that's a problem. Um, so again, basically, this is why I stick to really simplistic. I don't even want to say simplistic ingredients because you can have actually just used for fun and for market research a cleansing balm. I wanted to see how it worked, and I used one pump of that thing and was like, never again. It is a cleansing balm. It should be able to replenish lipids. It should be hydrating, but they have such an effective surfactant system in there that it rinses so dry. You are so dry after using it, it's crazy. So it's really tricky to identify those things. I would say there's really no quick answer to that question, unfortunately. And that's where we have to start doing our research. We have to really start understanding the washout effect and what's happening to our skin when we're using all of these different surfactant and emulsification systems.
What are some of your favorite lines for repair?
I don't have a single favorite line, unfortunately. I think there are definitely some products that companies get right, but I have yet to find a product line that gets all of it right. So it's frustrating. I will give some shout outs here. I love my Michelle Corley pore cleansing and calming cleansing oil. It's linoleic acid rich, and the surfactant system is very gentle. So that's what I have all my acne clients on. Anti-Age's moisturizer is currently my favorite, but something tells me there will be something coming out soon that'll top that as well. Um, and then I do like Vital Lipid Lotion from Hale and Hush, although it's not my first pick for an acne client. Um, so those are a couple that I lean into.
What cleanser again? Somebody said.
Michelle Corley. They have a pore cleansing oil and a calming cleansing oil. They are basically the same product, except the calming cleansing oil smells like cucumber, and I love it. Um, there's just nothing much different about it. They put cucumber extract in the calming cleansing oil. That's all.
Any more questions? You guys are welcome to turn on your mics. You have like 5 more minutes. Samantha?
I think I have a question, and it has more to do with back when you were talking about, sorry, trying to go back into my notes here, nutrient dense foods. So, of course, what you eat is important for your skin health, but from a lot of what I've learned, most of the nutrients nowadays, due to pesticides and whatnot, don't actually get absorbed properly into the skin to allow for, the best outcome. What are your thoughts on supplementing with products like advanced nutrition supplements? I don't know if you've heard of them. Things
Like
to,
internally?
pardon me?
Is that an internal supplementation?
Yes.
Okay. My sister uh, is in nutrition, so I send everybody who has those questions her way. I focus
Okay.
on the local environment of the skin, and I definitely am a big advocate for what you do internally plays a huge role. But this is kind of personal to me. When I was dealing with acne first, as I mentioned, it's a very mental stressful thing. A lot of acne clients can attest to this, and anybody here who's struggled with acne, the first thing I did was go down the food and nutrition rabbit hole. And I developed a really unhealthy relationship with food. So I don't really try to get on that super pushy bus with clients about what you can and can't eat. I'm more
Mhm.
interested in what I can do topically for their skin before imposing such a lifestyle changing regimen on somebody. Because I focus on adult acne. I'm already dealing with moms who struggle with time management and with eating and with everything else. And the last thing I want to do is tell them that if they're hungry, they can't pick up the chicken nugget their kid left behind. Um,
Mhm.
so I don't really get into that realm of things a lot. I do have recommendations for supplements that have been shown to help with acne that I will generally make. I think they're a great idea as long as they are also monitoring their blood work. You know, just go get your blood work done. Go look at what you actually need for yourself and where your nutrients and deficiencies lie, and work from there, is usually what
Okay.
I tell clients.
Okay.
I
Thank you.
love that. I love that you make it so approachable because some people are like, you can't do this, you can't eat that, and it's like, what? You know?
Yeah, I've played that game. I don't like that. And you know, if it gets to the point where we're treating your skin and I'm really seeing some concerning things and things are getting worse, yeah, let's look at your diet. Yeah,
Mhm.
let's look at some of the things that you're doing. You know, maybe make some small minor changes where we can and where it's realistic and healthy, but all things in balance. Like just take it easy. Don't just immediately cut things out and say no, thank you.
Jessica asked, I have a female client that has some texture, but struggles heavy with a lot of oil production. Always, no matter the phase of her cycle, what can I do to help manage her oils to prevent any breakouts?
My question would be, have you managed the barrier health first? Have you reestablished structure? Are you using products that actually maintain barrier health? And are any of the products that you're using heavy in surfactants and emulsifiers? Because that is generally the first thing we can do to calm things down. I have yet in 10 years to have a client that has significantly oily skin that we are not able to manage pretty well through barrier support. Now there can still be some more oil present, but that doesn't always mean acne if the quality of oil is improved and we're not dealing with that oxidation.
Someone asked, what ingredients do you look for out to avoid surfactants, emollients issues? And how do you find the balance with a product?
So it's emulsifiers, not emollients. Emollients are good. Emulsifiers are the problem there. So I work one on one with a lot of professionals, and some of them are trying to understand ingredients better. So because with things like this, I can list off a whole bunch of surfactants. Sodium C14, 16 olefin sulfonate is one that I will not touch with a 10-foot pole. But are you going to retain that information? Not so much. So what I would do is I would go and I would start with a cleanser that has very minimal ingredients and go ahead and look up every single ingredient from a research perspective. What does it do? What is it contributing to this formulation? How is it functioning within this formulation? And is it, you know, maybe doing multi-purpose things? Is it maybe supporting the skin and supporting stability? What is its purpose? And then look at, you know, the try to identify the surfactants, try to identify the emulsifiers, look for those things, and then do a deep dive into how aggressive some of them are. The one I just mentioned is actually in like car wash, so I can usually tell when a client is coming in using that particular one. I won't even use it in my hair wash, and it's in a ton of shampoos. Um, you just start kind of unpacking some of those and taking some notes, and you know, soon you'll be able to kind of start to identify what you're looking at. Oh, somebody asked about the oil cleanser. I do want to answer that one too. Or do you then customize the second cleanse based on the patient? Honestly, if you're using a good oil cleanser, that's not just a bunch of oils thrown together in a bottle, which a lot of them unfortunately are. Um, and it does have a very gentle surfactant system in it. You shouldn't really need that second cleanse all the time. If they're wearing heavy makeup, it's on a case by case basis. I will usually either have them use the anti-age cleanser, which I do think is a good cleanser, or I will have them use, if they're really compromised or really breaking out or something like that, and we're just getting to know their skin, I'll have them double cleanse with the oil cleanser. I do that a lot myself.
Is Epicutis a good cleanser, a good oil cleanser?
I would have to look at the ingredient deck. I'm not familiar with that one off the top of my head.
What is a good place to do research on ingredients?
I can tell you a couple that are not good places.
What are they?
Like the EWG, anything that is a paid thing. I mean, look at your actual scientific databases to understand ingredients. Look at, gosh, it's been a long time since I've dove into these, but there are some good ones that, gosh, actually, I think I have this in my notes. I had the answer to this question in my notes. Let me pull it up. I have the notes app on your iPhone. Whenever I used to get asked certain questions over and over and over again, I would have my responses ready to go in my notes app. And so it's been a long time since I've been asked this, but let's see if I can find it. Okay, Cosmetics and Toiletries is actually a really good publication that has some really great information. Um, the jaad.org articles are always really, really great. Um, but yeah, I would definitely avoid anything like EWG, Think Dirty, Yucca, things like that are really just terrible. Oh, somebody asked if my course will cover how skincare is formulated. I am coming out with a product line. I feel like I'm going to spill the beans on that right now, but I'm coming out with a product line. It's something I've been working on with a business partner who I would assume a lot of you know. He's fantastic, and we've been working on this for 2 years. We are going to partner with professionals, but we are taking a education forward approach with professionals. Um, and a lot of these topics are going to be covered. It's something we are really dedicated to making sure happens. He's a cosmetic chemist. He actually has a lot more experience in that realm than I do. So we are going to collaborate on education for that purpose as well. It is coming, it's just not here yet.
Please have your line available in Canada.
We're working on that. Actually, we are making sure that we are abiding by EU and Canada regulations so that once we have soft launched here in the US, we can easily break into those areas as well.
Drew, thank you so much for today. I appreciate you so much. You have no idea. You are a voice in this industry that's so needed. Like, you're such a breath of fresh air. And I just appreciate you taking the time for, man, you're like, your wealth of knowledge, like everything you've poured into this industry to pour back into us does not go unnoticed.
Thank you. I appreciate that. And I appreciate you too. I see all you do with your group and everything else too, and you work your butt off. So I thank you for having me, and I really appreciate it.
So we will continue the conversation back in the group. Let's 100% do this again. I really want to encourage you guys to get her course. I will send that out via newsletter again. I did put it in the chat, but I will repost it again.
Awesome.
Um, and yeah, let's get a lot of well-educated estheticians because when one grows, we all grow together.
Yes, I completely agree. That's what we're trying to do with the products. So I can't wait. Yeah, I'll be in the group, so I'll contrib continue this there as well.
Thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you. Bye.